When I tell you I was going through warfare, like anxiety, depression, restlessness, I could barely sleep. I was like having nightmares. I was in and out of the hospital. It was crazy. It felt like I was literally living a surreal life. And I like to say that that was my Job season, where I felt like God literally had his hand and his eyes on me, but he took his hand off to show me how much I needed to depend on him. Well, guess what? You're tuned in for Crafted for Glory. Guess what? I'm so pumped because you're here, okay? This is not just about me. I know you're watching this online and you're like, who's this random girl? This is not just about me. This is about community. This is about you. And so I really want to take some moments just to share a little bit about myself. Nothing too long, so stay a little bit tuned. We're gonna tap in. But first, I wanna introduce myself. My name is Jasmine C. Green, and I am a sister. I'm a family member to a lot of cousins. I'm an auntie. I have so many nieces and nephews. I'm also a wife. Come on, can we get into it? Like, I'm a wife as well. Love my husband, okay? Silence, okay? Because that's what we needed. So I'm really pumped because I'm all of these things, but I'm also things to the world, right? And so some of those things that I'm also to the world is I'm a public speaker. I'm also the CEO and founder of Mars Management, which is an incredible agency that I started about 9 years ago, where we started for print, commercial, and runway for all my girls that are literally all shapes, sizes, body types, and backgrounds. In addition to that, I'm also a content creator. I love content creation, as well as the best person to come to for all things advice, girl, because I'm going to get you together. So whether you're tuning in your car, or maybe you're tuning in on your couch, or you're washing dishes right now, this is the perfect time for us to get a little connected. So just to kind of tell you a little bit about myself, I started in the model and fashion industry when I was around the age of 16. And people always ask me like, well, why did you even get into fashion? Why did you even get into modeling? And the reason I got into it is honestly because I was watching America's Next Top Model. And around the season when that came out, my sister, who was currently at the time going to FIT, she would come home and bring me all the fancy clothes. But I can't lie to you guys, I used to take my mom's clothes and shoes out the closet like crazy. Like literally, I would be trying on stuff and they said I basically came out the womb posing, okay? So with that being said, I literally took some time to kind of like really tap into my creative ventures by tapping into the fashion industry. But a lot of people might see me for that side of the industry, that side of who I am. But a lot of people don't actually know my story and why it actually even matters that you're watching Crafted for Glory. So I want to share a little tidbit about that. I actually lost my parents before I was the age of 12. And a lot of people, when you hear that, you're probably like, girl, that's a lot. It was a lot, but you know what? God's glory has literally magnified that entire story. So as I lost both my parents, I wound up living from home to home up until the age of 17. Around the age of 17, I was actually facing homelessness. I was trying to figure out really where my next step was. Was I going to be a manager at McDonald's or was I going to go to college? And I had a lot of people around me in that season that really was speaking into my life, and I wound up going to college. So I went to college at Towson University. Listen, if you are from University of Maryland, don't come from my college, okay? I love y'all too, but Towson was where it was at. While I was there, I studied psychology, so I have a psych degree, as well as mass communications. And so studying those two things, honestly, I didn't know any way that I was going to use those two crafts in my life. But it just so happened that by the time I graduated from college, I went ahead and started my own company, which is Mars Management, which a lot of people know me for. Starting that company literally changed the trajectory of my life. And I'll get into all of that when we start watching and tuning in to the podcast. But after that, I wind up living on my own for about 8 years up until I met my husband and we got married. And then I moved to New Jersey and New York area. And here we are. We are here on set for Crafted for Glory. So you might be wondering, who is this podcast actually for? Well, sis, friend, whoever you are, cousin, auntie, all of y'all, I'm talking to you. I am looking at you. This podcast is literally for those that are in the creative industry, leadership, or maybe you're looking for a little bit of mentorship as you navigate through these years of your life. This is the perfect place for you. So you're probably wondering, okay, girlfriend, what are we going to be covering? And I want to kind of talk about that. I know that a lot of people, when they perceive a podcast that has to do with faith, they think it excludes them if you do not believe in God or Jesus. And I want to just set the place really clear. Baby, you're welcome here. You're welcome here. Come have a seat. Come sit in with me. This is the perfect place for you. There's no perfection that you have to have. There's no things that you have to have all together or in order. This is the place where we are going to allow industry knowledge, wisdom, and faith to all meet and interconnect through our creative industries. And so I'm so excited for you. You're not excluded, but you are included in this space. And so let's really talk about what it's going to focus on, right? We're going to focus on growth. Growth is going to be a big part of this podcast. We want you to bring yourself in. Once you hear an episode, you're leaving that episode and you're like, woo, I probably got some work to do. And you're going to constantly see as you go on this journey with us that this is going to be an area of your life that you will grow. Right? And then we're also going to have some really cool faith-based conversations. These are going to be conversations where you're going to get inspired to pursue your faith in a new and a fresh way. You're also going to get that professional development. We're going to talk about real things that are struggles, okay? So if you're the type of creative or the entrepreneur or the leader that's like, girl, how do I mix my faith and my professionalism when I'm working in the marketplace or if I'm out here writing a contract for a client? We want to be with you. And you're welcome in this community. So you're going to get that expert advice. You're going to hear from some of my incredible friends that I've built some relationships from. You're also going to hear from me. I'm going to tell you some things that I just think you should know. And then on top of that, we're going to have some great time to literally spend time with questions you'll be able to submit over some time. If you have a question, we might pull it up and talk about it in the podcast. But this is going to be a perfect space where community and support is present. Okay. In addition to that, I just ask one thing. If you're watching this, maybe you're listening on audio and you're like, girlfriend or friend or sister or whatever you want to call me, you're probably like, all that sounds good. But what I really want to do is to create a space where you feel like your heart can be open. So when you're coming into Crafted for Glory, you don't have to figure anything out because at the end of the day, we believe that you are crafted for God's glory. So let's get into it. I actually have my friend Erica here with me and I'm so pumped. Let's jump right in. All right, I'm so excited. I get to have this opportunity to tune in with one of my really good girlfriends, Erica. And I just want to say thank you so, so much for coming on today. I'm so excited for not just to like talk about me, but just to hang out with my girl.
Okay, we love a good hangout. Thank you for having me and sharing your platform with me. I'm so grateful and I'm so honored. I'll honor you at the end. But
oh, girl, you're amazing.
We're going to do it at the end. But thank you for having me. I'm really excited to get into this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Well, let's do it.
So I have to formally introduce you. I know you had a little preview before, but I need the people to know who you are, Miss Jasmine, Jasmine C. Green.
All right, don't make me cry, don't make me blush, don't make me do none of this.
That's the goal. That's a good girl moment, though. Like that's when you're hanging out with the girls, that's to be expected. So the Jasmine C. Green, she is the powerhouse behind Mars Management, a modeling agency that specializes in the print, commercial, and runway industries. She's also the dynamic host of the Crafted for Glory podcast, where she blends faith, leadership, and entrepreneurship to inspire creatives, entrepreneurs, and those navigating the hustle. Jasmine's journey is all about transformation and using her God-given talents to do something bigger than herself. Through her work, Jasmine shows others that their creativity and leadership can be used to glorify God in all aspects of life.
You wrote this? You're so good, girl.
Listen, ChatGPT, let me stop. From business to home to ministry, Crafted for Glory is not just a podcast. It is a movement for those looking to align their faith and passions with purpose.
Wow.
Crafted for Glory.
Come on.
Okay.
Because without God, we can't do it.
Not a thing. Okay. So I want to start off with some fun. I feel like I want people to know you a little bit more. and it's time for a game, and we love games.
Okay,
so I want
Erica, what you got going on here?
You about to find out. So I want to do 2 truths and a lie.
Okay.
So I feel like the game is pretty self-explanatory. So you're going to tell me 2 truths.
Okay, 2 truths.
Mix in 1 lie.
Okay.
And I'm going to guess which one is the lie.
Okay, give me a
I know you pretty well.
I got to think. I have to make sure that I don't go through this space of like saying it in order. You know how when you play this game with your friends.
Put your poker face on. Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Poker face. Okay. We're getting it together. Okay. 2 truths and a lie. The first thing I'm going to say is I am the baby of 8 siblings. Okay. I love being a baby. All right. We love that here. And then I would say my next one would be is in my childhood, I was like crazy adventurous. So I'm going to give you some other things there. I actually was like climbing a tree with my friends. And when I climbed the tree, one of my friends hit a beehive and it fell on all of us. So I had 103 like bee stings between me and my friends, and we was playing cops and robbers and all that. And so yeah,
that's a throwback game. They don't know about that.
No, that was back in the day. That's when people went outside.
That's when they were playing Manhunt. Okay, y'all remember that?
I really like that one though.
But you know the time period I'm talking about. Okay, don't discredit it. Don't discredit
it.
Okay,
I got you. So okay, last one. My last thing is also adventurous kid. I got hit by an ice cream truck. Okay, which ones do you think is the lie? Which one do you think is the truth?
I feel like all of those would happen to you. Like, I feel like they're all applicable. Okay.
I'm crying.
I feel like the B is the lie, because you were very specific with your number. You were like 100 bees, and I feel like how many bees are actually in a hive, for real?
They're protecting the queen.
Which one was it?
The lie is actually I'm the baby of 7. I actually did get, between me and my friends, it was over 100 bee stings.
I feel like that slight variation shouldn't count. I feel like the stories were just way too specific for that.
I'm right. I did that on purpose.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah.
So you were really hit by an ice cream truck?
Yes, girl, I did. When I think and it was crazy because that day my mom also, for the day of the beehive, it was like within a couple of weeks later.
Okay.
Yeah. I had a lot going on.
Did they give you free ice cream after?
I don't remember. Okay. I just remember falling out. And the crazy thing about that is the ice cream truck was moving slow.
Watch out for children.
No, that's why the sign is there. So anyway, I'm running, and I was being hard-headed because my dad told me not to go in like the little jar that keeps all the money, the little coins. You know, your parents used to have the little coins.
The coin jar.
Yeah. So he told me not to go in there, but I decided to be a disobedient child, and so I went ahead and I took like 75 cents. This was when ice cream was cheap. Okay?
Affordable.
Okay, affordable. And so I went in there and I ran straight outside, and I didn't see the truck between the cars.
You didn't look both ways. You didn't follow protocol.
Well,
you may have been the problem. Actually,
I probably was the problem, honestly.
Yeah. He saw you. You ain't see him.
Yeah. So I broke a little bit of my arm. Not like split it in half, but it was just like a little fracture.
Well, you recovered. Praise the Lord.
Amen.
We love that.
Because
we're here today.
Yeah.
You know. So I kind of want to kick things off, giving people an opportunity to learn more about you. Like,
okay.
Who is Jasmine C. Green? I just love the way that just flows together, baby. Okay. So I want to know what inspired you to create Crafted for Glory? Like, what was your vision and your mission behind even creating this platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm still actually like taking this all in, if I'm honest, because I think the way God has literally shown up in my life, I've struggled with actually realizing that I was crafted. Right? And so when I think about why I started Crafted for Glory, I really was in a very like dark season where I was battling with anxiety, battling with depression, and I really did not feel crafted. Like I didn't feel crafted in my everyday job. I didn't feel crafted in the work that I was doing. I just felt like a little bit broken. And I remember I actually was like reading, I was reading through Isaiah, and I believe it's 43:7, where it literally talks about that you are made in the image of God and you are crafted for his glory. And when I literally was thinking about that, I'm like, God, this don't make sense because I don't feel the very thing that I'm reading right at this moment. And it was literally in that season where I was talking to my husband. And I'm like, I want some change. I want something new
Right.
and something fresh. And so at the time, I'm literally sitting there and I'm discussing this with my husband. And he's like, it'll come to you, whatever is fresh and whatever is new. And so I actually attended this women's conference and I was mind blown. If you know Woman Evolve, I went to Woman Evolve and it was so powerful. The conference was about surrender. And I definitely went not wanting to surrender nothing. I was like, I'm good, God. Like, we got this together. Okay. And then I get there, I have this moment and this encounter with God, which was incredible when it comes to like, yes, you have moments with God, but I think this moment was a divine pivotal moment for me because he revealed to me that I was crafted. And so as I'm going through that, I'm literally like, I'm sitting and I'm walking through all of these thoughts about myself. And I realized that yes, he made me in his image from the moment I was in my mother's womb to the moment now. Even when I don't feel like what the word says, it doesn't mean that it's void of truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love when you're reading the word and like something really just jumps out to you. You know what I mean? I feel like that's just the Holy Spirit, you know, especially when you're just not feeling it. And there have been many times where I feel like we just go through the motions. You get so lost in just doing the thing that you sometimes miss the very thing that God is trying to speak to you. So
exactly.
I just think that's an amazing story. And I think I know a little bit more about the story and even like how this whole thing came about, because when I say that this platform is truly God ordained, I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because the way that you have explained this story to me as to how we even got this beautiful space to record in, I feel like that's a testimony in and of itself. So I feel like people really need to understand how we got here.
Okay, so how did we get here? So this is actually a wild story. So let's go on the ride, okay? Y'all ready? So essentially what happened was I've always like dreamed of like being in this space where I could cultivate creativity with my voice. I never knew where that would actually go, and not to like jump ahead into future episodes where I'll talk more about this, but I actually had like probably up until about 5 to 6 years ago, before I rededicated my life to Christ, I did not like using my voice. So I was not really like, I was always talkative. I used to get in trouble when I was in first grade.
I believe that.
I always used to get in trouble, but basically I literally look back on that, and there was a season of my life where I was muted, and I didn't have my voice, and I didn't find my voice. And so about 5 to 6 years ago, when I started to redevelop what my voice looked like and what that sounded like, I was like, well, God, how am I going to use my voice? Right. Like, what is that going to be for? And it wasn't until 4 years later, which is around last year, that God revealed to me what that actually was. Now, let's rewind. So you guys don't know this, but I got married 3 years ago.
And she did. It's a wife all the way.
Okay, period. Love my husband. And when I got married, I actually was born and raised in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And I moved from Maryland to New Jersey. And my husband was already up here. And so I'm moving to a new state. Mind you, I have my business that's operating in Baltimore, Maryland, doing all the work there. And I've always traveled back and forth in New York. But 3 years ago, I literally had no idea like how I was going to navigate my business being in another state to moving up here. And so I wanted to look for a studio. I decided to look for a studio space, and I was going all over. Like, I'm telling you, like, my husband, love him. He found me a realtor. We looked at commercial spaces.
All the way in. We were all the way in.
Dive. Okay. We dove all the way in. And so I'm looking at all these spaces, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I see so much potential. But I haven't seen anything that was like God ordained. And I'm like, okay, Lord, well, what is it that you want for me? And so I go, and one of the spaces I went to, I fell in love with it completely. I literally said to myself, I was like, wow, I can see myself here. But at the same time, it still doesn't feel like right timing. Yeah. And I was just like, why? Like, why does this not feel like right timing? So needless to say, I told my husband, I was like, look, we're not going to do this. This was 3 years ago. And I was like, I don't feel called right now. It doesn't feel good. And literally before I was like, well, as I was like prepping for the podcast, I started writing out dates. Right. And
ooh, we love specific.
Okay.
prayers.
Like,
okay.
So would you guys mind if I like pull up the actual date?
Please do.
Like, so I have it saved, and I wanted to make sure that like I pulled it up. So I have a boatload of notes. Y'all, I got notes for journals.
It's giving very much creative.
Yep. Much. I got notes for days. And so I have this part in my notes where it says when God speaks to me. And so there was a time where I felt like this was a sign. So I decided to write out the podcast timeline just randomly in the morning. And so just to kind of give you guys context, so September 19th, to be specific, in 2023, I wanted to purchase a studio space, like I mentioned. And then November 6th, so we are in September, then it goes to November. So around November 6th, we get to, I'm coming home from like Fashion Week, I think, at this time. And I'm driving, and I'm riding by one of the spaces that I actually viewed. And y'all, I'm not even lying to you, but I don't know why, but the Holy Spirit said, go to the space that you were going to go to and literally pray over it.
Wow.
And I was like, nah, God, this is crazy.
What you mean?
I'm like, okay, I've heard of moments like this from other people, but at the same time, I'm like, this happening to me, this is crazy. Like, why do you want me to pray over this space? So in my obedience, I was reluctant at first. I was like, nah, this don't make sense.
Right.
But I was like, let me be obedient and just see what's going to happen. So I go and I pull up to the space. I recorded it. I didn't record the prayer that he asked me to pray, but I recorded the footage of me just feeling out of whack. Like, Lord, why am I here? I don't understand. So I pray. And at the time that I'm praying, I'm like, all right, well, let's go. Cool. So you guys tracking, we're there. January 27th of 2024, the Lord basically directed me to leave my ministry role to pursue my business, like fully, like full time, like all in this season. So I go through that season, and from March to August, I was going through warfare of 2024. Literally, when I tell you I was going through warfare, like anxiety, depression, restlessness, I could barely sleep. I was like having nightmares. I was in and out of the hospital. It was crazy. It felt like I was literally living a surreal life. And I like to say that that was my Job season, where I felt like God literally had his hand and his eyes on me, but he took his hand off to show me how much I needed to depend on him.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So fast forward, September comes, I go back to Fashion Week. After that, I then attend the conference for Women Evolve. And at that time, God's like, I need you to surrender a couple of things. Okay?
That word is scary. We don't like that
I
word.
don't like that. I don't like it, but I
Mm-hmm.
love it because the results are really fresh once you get through it. But at that time, after the conference, I heard this incredible testimony by Irene Rollins about her addiction to alcohol at the time. And she's preaching and she's testifying to how she decided to change her life and, you know, go to rehab and all of that. Now, at the time, as I was listening to the sermon, I started to have like these remembrances of visions of like how my family has struggled with alcoholism. I lost several uncles to that. I've lost people that I've known to that. And I didn't see myself having an addiction to alcohol, but I did see that it became a problem. It became a dependent. So at that time, I surrendered alcohol and I've been 123 days sober.
Woo! We love that.
Okay.
We love that.
So that was one part that I surrendered. And then God is like, I want you to give me your all. And part of my all was a part of my business and changing the way that I ran my business. And he had shared with me, he says, Jasmine, you've operated this business with my favor, but not me as your CEO.
Ooh.
And I was like,
Ooh.
well, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
Like, Lord,
no, that's
what?
real.
What? So just to kind of give you guys back to that timeline. So all of this is happening. I'm having that revelation in September of 2024. And God says, okay, great. You surrender all these things. Now I want you to start a podcast. I said, what? What?
Come again?
What?
One more time.
How are we doing that?
How many times do we have to ask God the same question?
Over and over again.
Over.
Like
are
he
you
doesn't
sure?
have the answers. Like
Yep.
he knew.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm literally like, this is insane. And so you're probably like wondering, okay, Jasmine, like, well, how did we get to Crafted for Glory? So that warfare season is when I found out that I was crafted. But fast forwarding to the time where God's like, I want you to start a podcast. I lie to you not. I was so like, nah.
Yep.
I'm like, I don't want to be crucified.
Okay.
Listen, I ain't nobody pastor.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to be used by you, but on my own terms.
Okay.
I know
way.
we've been there.
Yep.
I know we've been there, but I kept saying to myself, obedience is better than sacrifice. And I've remembered how like in times in the past where I was obedient to something, God blessed me more. So I was like, God, well, what makes it different about this one, right? Like, how much more could you bless me if I've done things in the past that you've blessed me more than I can imagine? And so I realized, like, me being in that obedience, I said, well, guess I got to figure it out. Got to figure it out. I lie to you not. One of our directors that's here, his name's Gil. I was sitting in a coffee shop with a blank page, y'all, okay, that said podcasts. He comes in and he asks me what I'm doing, and he's just like chatting it up. And we had filmed a documentary just months before then. And I'm telling him, like, yeah, so I'm thinking about starting a podcast. And he's like, great, I'll help. I was like, what?
Was that affirmation, reformation? What's
God,
the word?
this don't make sense.
What's the word?
This don't make sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well, where do we start? And he's ready to like go in and give me ideas.
Fill up the paper. I'm
like, Lord, I don't even know where to start. And so in that moment, I was like, well, this has to be a God thing. Yeah. But I was still reluctant. I think up until 3 days ago, I was reluctant. Okay. Like I was still reluctant because I'm like, no, like this can't be like exactly what you want me to do, because over time I had heard people say like, Jasmine, you should speak. But I'm a strong believer that the word speaks to me first and other people's words to me are confirmation from what the word already says. So I just take it with a grain of salt until God says go, right? And so with that being said, I'm literally sitting there and I come back from the conference. Mind you, I had been in the coffee shop with Gil just for a few moments. And that week later, I get back from the conference and my friend invites me to an event. Mm-hmm. And y'all, I had already RSVP'd for this event. I didn't look at the address. I didn't look at any of the details. I just was like, because I was so focused on Fashion Week and the conference, I wasn't paying attention. So I get back and my friend invited me to a wine and chill event.
After you had decided
not to drink no more.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I was like, Lord, but this my friend,
right.
You know,
what am I
like,
gonna do?
how am I? I'm just not gonna show up. Like, he knows how much that like showing up for my friends means to me. And so I remember like calling James first, my husband, and I was like, babe, like I literally don't think that I should go to this event. And he's like, why? And he was like, you're not gonna drink. Like, do you think that he said, do you think that what you promised God is not gonna come through? And I was like, I hate when he do that to me.
We love a husband that's honest.
Okay, because he came from my throat. Like, didn't you just pray that you would be untempted, and now you're like, I don't want to go? So I'm sitting in the mirror, I'm doing my makeup, I'm getting myself together, I'm getting dressed, and like I was just hearing like this voice deep inside of me saying like, don't go. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, tag, like maybe I should not go to the event.
It's giving the devil.
Okay. I'm like, I should just not go. And I didn't know at the time, like why I shouldn't have went, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, you know what? Why would God tell me not to do something that he's called me to? Because he called me to creatives. Yep. So for me not to go to a creative event seems like it's off, and I start rebuking the devil. I'm like, listen, we not listening to you today. I'm not going to be tempted if I go.
No, ma'am.
All right, so fast forward, we get to the event. I lie to you guys not. This event was in the same space of the studio I prayed over.
Okay.
I pulled up, and I'm like, with my husband, and I'm like, babe, we saw this a year ago. Like, this is crazy. Why are we here? I personally thought no creatives would come to the space. And God literally showed me as I walked into the venue, 50 plus people are here.
Wow.
This episode is proudly sponsored by Tech Light Associates. This is your go-to AV solution. I'm talking all things audio, all things visual, and all things production. Whether you're hosting a wedding or an event, this is going to be your AV top tier solution. I'm talking everything you need. You don't want to be worried. You don't want to kind of go throughout your event wondering if your tech is actually working. This is going to be the perfect solution for you. And I'm telling you this because I want to make sure that you're locked in. From weddings to corporate events to hanging out with your bestie for her next launch party, I'm telling you, you're not going to be disappointed. This is going to be the perfect place for you to make moments unforgettable. I'm talking about moments that bring memories. Ready to elevate your event? it's the perfect opportunity to do it. All you have to do is visit www.techlightavl.com and follow them on social media to stay tuned for all the next things that they have coming. I can't wait to connect with you again. So let's jump back into the episode. See you soon. Bye. 50 plus people. I'm like, what? This is wild. I get in, somebody immediately hands me a drink. I pour it into my husband's. I switch it out for water.
Obedience.
I switch it out for water. I'm like, I'm not going to be tempted. I'm not doing that. And so I get in. I go into the event. I'm meeting all these incredible creatives and cool people. And I go up to the guy who owns the space. And I'm just like, hey, I don't know if this is possible, but I would love to like do something in your space. And maybe we can see how it is. And basically to kind of close out that testimony of how I started Crafted for Glory, I think Crafted for Glory started on its own. And what happened was my obedience aligned it together so that God could work the miracle. So actually the space that we're sitting in right now is the space that we are filming Crafted for Glory in that I prayed over 3 years ago.
Isn't God so good? Like,
so amazing.
I think there's so many gems to pull from what you just said. Like, there's just so much to unpack. But I think the key things are that there is favor in obedience.
Yeah, that's great.
I think that we have a choice, right? And I think that you made a choice to commit to something that you felt like God put on your heart.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much there that equates to what this is and what this could be.
Yeah.
Because like you didn't have to say yes. You didn't.
Definitely scared to say yes.
Very much so, very much so. And I think it's so in alignment. I told this to you offline, like with your voice, like you have such a powerful voice. You have such a powerful story, and you really are gifted to talk to people, to mentor, to pray. Like you have such a strong calling. And I am definitely one of those people who told you that you needed to use your voice more. So talk about a very full circle moment. Like absolutely every time. Okay. Friends call each other higher.
Yes.
And we love that. But a part of that is the entrepreneurial journey. And I want to give a very real perspective on that because online, Instagram makes the founder and entrepreneurial journey look so good. Yeah. And best believe I'm going to be posting these behind the scenes once I get the green light and we're going to make it look even better, you know? But I want a real perspective from you. Like one thing about being an entrepreneur, especially when you're building publicly like you have, is that social media makes it look so glamorous, right? And I get it. There's an aspect of that is glamorous, right? Like, wait until I post these behind the scenes, y'all. It's going to be good. And that's the fun part about it. But there's so much more that goes into it. Yeah. So I want to know from your perspective, is entrepreneurship glamorous? What has been your experience? Like, tell me a little bit more about your story and your founder journey, really.
Yeah, that's great. So I've actually been in business for 9 years. I actually just celebrated 9 years on January 17th.
That's a middle schooler. You know that, right? Like
it's my niece and my nephew. Like 9 whole years. Wow, God is so good. I would say when it comes to looking at entrepreneurship as glamorous, I think that it is glamorous, right? And the reason why I say that is because everything that glitters is not gold. So one thing you're going to look at with entrepreneurship is the glam. Like it's when you walk in the store, the first thing you see is how bright it is, how colorful it is, how exciting it is. The feeling of entrepreneurship is glamorous, but the grit, the work, and all the things that goes with that, it requires a certain type of resilience and tenacity that is not glamorous.
Absolutely.
And something that I would say is like when I'm thinking about like my journey and where I've been, I went through the woes. Like my first 3 years of business, I was failing tremendously, right? Like I think that people don't realize only 1 in 4 businesses make it after 3 years. So celebrating number 1 as a Black woman, number 2 as a woman, going all the way to 9 years has literally been eye-opening that I could even have gotten through that. And I couldn't have done it obviously without God. But when I think about my journey and the woes, like the first 3 years, like I spent like $40K on marketing.
Oh, you make me feel a little bit better about myself. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your truth. Because
But
girl,
it was bad.
I was in that ballpark too, and I thought it was just me.
It was bad. It was really, really bad though, because I thought that the glamour was what I needed to showcase for my business to be authentic. And so I wasted money when I should have been hiring people to help me navigate this business, experts and all of that fun stuff. So that first 3 years were tragic. Like I was literally doing things I had no idea knowing what I was doing. All I knew is that I was supposed to start a business that is going to help Black and brown women get into the commercial print and runway space. And literally as I go throughout those years, but it wasn't until year 5 that I realized how tenacious I had to be. Because at year 5, I lost literally all my models. I had 3 models left. And then by that time, that January, which was around 2018, around that January, I literally had 1 girl left. And I was in 3.
She's a soldier.
Yeah, she was a soldier. Mind you, I'm working my 9-to-5 job while I'm running my business. In the first 3 years, literally, I would work 9 to 5 and then 5:30 to 3 a.m. Don't recommend that.
That's the reality, though, for most entrepreneurs, especially women who have kids and husbands or partners. There are so many shoes that you have to fill. And entrepreneurship is like you said, it's your 5 to 9. It doesn't end.
It doesn't end. Yeah. I mean, I really highly recommend set some boundaries. Don't be going to 3 a.m. You should be in at about 7:30.
Boundaries, I feel come year 3. Boundaries come year 3. Okay.
Yeah, I do feel that grit and that hunger does have to really be there in the first couple of years. But one thing I will say, I definitely do wish I didn't do is put all of the weight and the work on me and none on God. Because when I started that first 3 years, it was all about me, how much money I could make the business, how much money and how many things I could do for myself. I wasn't really thinking about the overall big picture. I didn't even expect to even make it past 3 years because I kept hearing terrible stories that this doesn't even happen. And so even around that time where I'm going through that year and I'm losing everything, I lost my job that same year. I was losing my friends that same year. And I also lost people in my business. I had to re-navigate. And I remember telling myself at this point, it's really time for me to get somebody who knows more than me. Right. And I had tried that in the beginning, but whole nother tangent, but a whole nother story. It was really hard for me to get some mentorship in the space that I was going and the direction, because at that time, diversity and inclusion was not a trend.
Yep.
Right? That was 9 years ago. That wasn't something that people marked off of a box.
It's currently detrending,
as
we know in today's climate.
We're going to talk about that on another
episode.
Yeah. But it wasn't a trend. It was something in my heart that I saw because of what I went through with my own personal business. I mean, I literally had to go to the library to find different things between businesses and learning how to operate, learning about LLCs. I had to put that grit in that no one would ever see. Nobody's going to see those quiet things. And to the point of that glamour portion is that's the part that people don't see. They don't see the grinding, the tears at night when you don't feel like doing something or if somebody's all dependent on you. And I'm so grateful because around that time, after I was losing everything, I had prayed for a business coach. And one of my really good girlfriends now, she actually, at that time, I hit her up and I was like, hey, would love to do some business coaching. She gave me her rate and I said, next time. Yeah.
Let me follow up.
Yeah, that $40,000 I wasted. Yeah, baby, I ain't got it no more. Yeah. So I had to figure out, I'm oh my goodness, I can't afford a business coach. I can't even afford the expertise that I really wanted. And it was so crazy because months go by, 3 months go by, and she's like, hey, so I know I gave you my rate, but God actually told me to coach you instead. And I was alignment. Yeah. So, I mean, she's my really good girlfriend to this day. But literally we worked for months to reconfigure my business. And it was crazy because during that time, it was just 1 year before the pandemic was about to hit.
Wow.
Yep.
During your, I call mine a struggle season. I feel there's a season in entrepreneurship. It's your wilderness season. Yeah. It's your struggle season. Yeah. Somewhere in there is that light bulb moment, right? It's that aha moment. And you briefly touched on, trying to do everything yourself and not giving God the driving seat, not letting him be the CEO in your business. Yeah. Was that your aha moment? Or do you feel there was something else that contributed to that?
Yeah, no, I think that was my aha moment. I realized I could not do all of this on my own. At that point, when I was able to work with a business coach, I realized I needed team. I needed community. I needed people who knew more than me. I needed to serve still. Come on, let's get into it. Because the entrepreneur, real quick little off subject, but on subject. Let's talk about it. I think a lot of times creatives forget that their requirement of serving helps them successfully in the future. I think that when we go into entrepreneurship and we go into the space of trying to figure out like, oh, like I deserve to get paid this, I deserve to be this. You don't deserve anything, actually. You absolutely don't deserve anything, but you are worthy of it. You're worthy of the success. You're worthy of getting the opportunities that you want, but you don't deserve those opportunities because you haven't put in the fortitude. You haven't put in the gems before in order to earn those. And I think that one thing that really set me apart in those 3 years that was able to at least sustain me for 3 years is prior to those 3 years, I was always in somebody's production studio. I was always asking people questions. I was always going back and forth to New York to learn something for free. Not for a paid internship.
You put in the reps.
Okay? It was that in which should have sustained me throughout those 3 years. But just think about that. Just those 3 years were able to sustain me with serving. Imagine what would have happened if I started asking people better questions, started getting into more opportunities where I get to serve that was intentional. Because I was serving out of just wanting to help and to learn. But if I was way more intentional of serving, I probably would have been faster and better at my business earlier.
And one thing about it, and this is just like from my personal story, the more you lean into your entrepreneurship journey, the more the enemy will convince you that serving is not a priority. Because you need to serve yourself, you need to serve your business, you need to serve your team, and everything else should take a back seat. And the way that you have to be so grounded and convicted in your understanding of your role and your faith requires a whole different level. I don't care what anyone says. Entrepreneurship is spiritual. Like all the way through and through. So that's just my 2 cents on that.
Come on, let's
that's just my 2
gems.
cents. But you mentioned,
if you ain't taking notes, you should be taking notes.
Please grab a notebook, grab a pen.
Something.
Yeah, and follow us on social media. But you mentioned having an issue learning how to hire a team. And I feel like that's something that entrepreneurs struggle with a ton, especially when you start as a solopreneur. You have your hand in every single basket. And knowing you are a little perfectionist.
You know,
you
recovering.
We'll put that out there in the atmosphere.
That's why I was up 3 a.m. writing scripts.
Recovering. So how have you navigated the feeling or those feelings that come with wanting everything to be perfect? How do you continue to move forward when things aren't perfect and they aren't the way that you want them to, but you push forward? Like, what does that look like for you? And those are the things that we don't see. So how do you navigate that on the back end?
And I have to be raw and honest and real. I'm not perfect. I know the setup looks great. I know me and Erica up here eating, but we're not perfect by any means necessary. And I just want to throw that out there because this space is for those that are not perfect, but they're in progress. And I think to answer your question of how did I get through some of those dark moments where perfection was kind of like eating at me. Come on, Jasmine, you got to have it together. I had to actually realize that this is a journey, not a marathon. And in my quiet time, I think this goes back to what you mentioned about how important it is that spirituality is a part of your journey as an entrepreneur, because it was my quiet times that got me through. It wasn't, hey, let me call up so-and-so, because not everybody's going to have an answer for a call on your life. Come on. Let me just tell you, not everybody can help you through the call that's on your life because they may not even understand it and they actually might deter you in an unintentional way.
God gave you the vision.
You the vision, baby. And listen, what you have to do in those moments where you're trying to figure out how do I fight perfection versus pursuing my purpose to make sure I get there, you have to surrender.
That word is coming back.
Keep coming back. You have to surrender to the fact that 1, you're crafted in glory. 2, you were made in your mother's womb, and so you were called to the purpose in which you're pursuing. And then 3, you have to really understand that it's not what you do on the outside, it's what you do on the inside of your heart that actually sustains you throughout your business. Because when you're worried at night because the check is delayed 30 days, when you got to do payouts and you ain't got the money because the bank account empty,
the net
okay?
90s and the net 90s and net 90 terms for creatives.
They should just get rid of that, but
that should be a crime.
You have to sustain yourself through those moments. Or I can just personally just share a quick little tidbit. There was a time where I was sick. I had lost my voice. I had lost my grandmother, both of my grandmothers. I still had to maintain my business. I still had to plan my wedding all at that one season. I was moving to a new state. All of these things were happening at the peak of my business. I could have literally shown up to my meetings and said, you know, I can't do this, right? So in that moment, I necessarily, and this is a leadership thing too, but I had to realize that I didn't need to show up for my team in a way of perfection. So I told them, this is hard. But I didn't go into details about what was hard. I said, this is hard, and I'm going to need some grace in this season. And I think a lot of times leaders fail to be honest, and I feel like they fail to say, hey, like, this is what's going on. You don't got to give nuts and bolts, but you do have to give vision. And so I told them in this instance of like, hey, like, this is a hard season for me. I didn't go into details, but we're going to get through this, and I'm excited for the future. Yeah. And I gave vision. And I think that a lot of times as we get through these moments in the dark time, we have to learn how to be a leader the way that God wants us to be the leader and not how our emotions want us to be a leader.
I admire your leadership qualities. I feel like this is the perfect time to inject that because I've been able to see you lead in so many aspects and so many different capacities. So I want to know, can you share any insights on how you manage to hold that leadership torch when things get demanding, when things get overwhelming, because there are so many things that leaders go through behind closed doors that people will never see. Yeah. And it goes back to that spiritual warfare. And like you said, it's sometimes when you're at the peak of your career, the peak of your business, everything else that stems from that starts to go to chaos. Yeah. And you're like, God, but why? Yeah. It feels like you're giving me so much favor and blessing in this area, but you're letting everything else go down the drain. Why this during this time? So how have you gone about keeping your faith, keeping that leadership torch, having people rely on you for vision when sometimes your vision is a little cloudy yourself? How do you navigate those seasons?
Yeah, you said something that I think really stood out about like when the chaos is coming, but you're still required to show up. And I can't help but think of the story. I've been studying Esther, and I can't help but think of how she went from this season in her life where she was an orphan and she got called to be a part of a kingdom and run a kingdom. She didn't sign up for that. And I think that as I look at her story and I go through the pieces of her story, there were times in that story of Esther where she actually had to set aside her emotions and how she was going to show up so that she can save a nation. Right. So what that means for this specific question of like, how do I show up in times where things are demanding, but I might not be in the best space possible? I remember my why. And I think that Esther in that moment, in that story, she knows her why. She knew at the end of the day that God loved her and didn't put her in this position to run. So she literally says in her words, she says, if I perish, I perish. But she went to God first and said, hey, I'm going to fast and tell all my people to fast. Tell all my people to help. And I think in that moment, she had a realization that I can't do this on my own. I got to depend on God to get me through that. And if I perish, I perish. And I think that as I've learned to kind of like lead in a way that really helps me get to a place where I know that it's not dependent on me. I didn't always do that. Every time I made a lot of mistakes as a leader. But I think that what I've realized is at the end of the day, it is going to be what it is. What she say? At the end of the day got to end.
The day got to end.
It got to end. Okay. So at the end of the day, I think that would be like my biggest takeaway from me personally is just knowing and flowing with the punches, because we live in a broken world. I mean, people are going to people. Like, that's just what it is. So you might find yourself in a situation where your team shows up late, but you know you have to pay hourly for something or you got to do something. You got to roll with the punches. You just got to switch it up.
I don't like those punches.
I know. They hurt.
They expensive.
They hurt. They expensive too. But you know what? You got to be a kickboxer, okay? Yeah. You got to be a kickboxer or a boxer or something. You got to learn how to fight back.
Absolutely. But I love what you said about understanding your why. But I want to challenge that a little bit because I feel like there are a lot of people who still don't know their purpose. They're still trying to discover their purpose. They don't fully understand their why. So when you don't have a why to anchor onto, what do you do?
That's great. I will say this. Believe it or not, I think that everybody knows their why. I think that there is untapped potential in inwardly looking at who you are because you're often comparing yourself to other people. So when you are constantly like, well, they're doing this, they're doing that, you're following a track that God never sent you on. So it's hard to identify your why when you're always looking at someone else. And I think that if people start to sit back and they take a moment to slow down and get out of comparison and get out of focus on everybody else's journey, they will discover their why. And I'm telling you that not because I got it together, but that's what happened to me. Yeah. I think that when I had originally started my business, I knew my why because in the beginning, my why was selfish. So I think that when you look at entrepreneurs and where they're going and creative specifically, I think that we kind of do something because we're like, oh, like I want to make money off of this. Oh, I want to be this successful person. I want to be on this big platform. In the reality of that, your motives are wrong. And I'm telling you that because my motives when I started my business was like, I want to prove my family wrong, that I'm not going to end up 16 and pregnant, that I'm not going to be stuck as a black and brown woman in the hood. Like, that's not going to be my story. But those motivations are wrong because they're selfish. They're about you. And I think that as I've learned and I've grown to know that my why was never about me, but it was about the nation. It was about bringing people closer to God through the things that he called me to. But it was also about helping people to see who they are.
Yeah. I love your perspective on what to do when you feel like you don't have your why. I love your perspective on everyone has a why. Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about self-love as we kind of get towards the end of this. I feel like worthiness and love are very connected. And I feel like a part of the journey of understanding your why, because I agree we all have it, sometimes we just don't fully understand it. The overarching theme of that journey is really centered around self-love. It's understanding your worth, understanding the love that you are, I want to say deserving of, because we're all deserving of love to a certain capacity. So I want to know a little bit more about your self-love journey. Is that something you've ever struggled with in finding your purpose, identity? And what advice would you give to someone who is seeking, I guess, some type of wisdom in that area? Because it's really hard being a creative is not easy.
No, it's not.
And it's a very underrated skill set because it wasn't something that was monetizable until a lot recently. Mm-hmm. So you get a lot of backlash. You get a lot of people that don't understand. You get a lot of people that don't see your vision, that don't see your calling. And it can cause you to doubt yourself a lot, but I think it's that self-love that kind of pulls you through and reminds you of why it is you're doing what you're doing. So what would you say to that person?
Yeah, that's great. So there's two parts to this. So first, I want to start with an introspective view. I didn't always have self-love for myself. A lot of people, I'm sure you're going to like go back, but I'm pretty sure people have seen some of my story before this episode. But I lost both my parents before I was 12. So I had felt like in that season of my life, love left me. So as I grew up in my adolescence, up until I was about the age of 17, when I was on my way facing homelessness and trying to figure out, am I going to go to college or am I going to be the manager at McDonald's? Which one? I was working through those different pieces, and I think love got lost along the way. And instead what came was pride. And I think that when we struggle with self-love, it's because we have a little bit of pride. Let me break that down for you. What I mean by that is we think that other people are way more deserving of love than we think ourselves are deserving of love. And what I mean by that is because we don't know our identities. We don't know whose we are. We don't know what we are made for. But when you start to unravel and start pulling those pieces together, after I rededicated my life to Christ about 6 years ago, I was introduced to a new love. I was introduced to the love of Jesus. I was introduced to the love of God, that he created me in my mother's womb. And in addition to that, he knew that I would be exactly where I was when I lost my parents. He knew everything that I would go through. He knew all of the things that I would manage and I would walk through. But what was big about that, and what I wanted to kind of close out and wrap this up with, what is big about that is it's okay not to know it, but you got to go search for it. And you can't search for it in the wrong places, because when you start to do that, that replaces the very self-love that you think can sustain you through the tough times of entrepreneurship and creativity. And I'll pull this point out. a lot of times people don't know what to charge as a creative because they don't know what their value is. Ooh. And when you don't know your value and you don't know whose you are and who created you, typically what you do, you often lower the standard for your own self. And I've heard this from one of my mentors before. He said something like, your standard should not be at the height of you. Like, it shouldn't be something you look up to. Your standard should be the floor. It's something you stand on. Wow. And if you stand on your standard, then your foundation of self-love will never be altered.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing about a girl chat is that it's going to get you all the way together. Okay?
Listen,
all the way
I love
together.
girl time. It's my favorite time.
It is. So I want to end this on a fun note because we got really deep. And that's one thing that we do more often than not.
Listen, I know.
When we get together, we're going to have a deep moment for sure.
Yeah.
But if you could have any superpower to help you with your work or personal life, what would it be and why?
Oh, man. A superpower? Oh.
And you can't say God because we know that already. That's a given. That's a given.
We got that. I would want to fly. If I had a superpower, I know that sounds crazy and it sounds like really, really dramatic because it's not really like something tangible and realistic. But the reason I would want to fly is so that I could visit more people.
I thought you were going to say gas prices, but that too.
I'm crying. Gas prices, I need that too.
But that too.
But yeah, I would just want to see more people. Like, I wish I could just get up and like multiply myself and just bloop. Anyway, but yeah, I would want to fly because I want to see the world and I want to reach more people.
Yeah. And that's exactly what you're going to do with this platform. So like I said in the beginning, I just want to take a moment and honor you, Jasmine. You have such a calling on your life. And I just want to, if there's anything that I can do to help you along this journey, please let me know. But I've seen you in leadership capacity. I've seen you be a servant. I've seen you be a wife. I've seen you be a business owner. And the way that you handle all of those roles with so much grace is truly inspiring to me. And I'm so grateful to call you a friend. I'm so grateful to see you stepping into this new chapter of your calling. And
don't get me crying.
No, absolutely. And you are just worthy of so much. And knowing your story to the capacity that I know it, there is so much grace. There is so much favor. The favor of God is truly, truly on you, and it radiates from you when you walk into a room, and it's contagious. So I'm excited to see what you do with this platform. You are truly, truly crafted for glory.
Amen.
And I am just excited to see where this journey takes you.
I love you so much.
Are you praying us out on camera? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm going to pray us out, and then we're going to close up. So dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity for us to meet together tonight. This is your platform. You called us crafted for your glory, and we're so grateful that we get to share a part of this with you. Lord God, we're so grateful that we don't get to do this on our own, but with your presence and your glory. God, we just pray that this podcast, this moment, this season will touch everybody's heart that is a part of it. And may this journey be a blessed one. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.
I love you, friend.
I love you. So I'm so grateful that you guys tuned in. This has been a multitude of things that I actually couldn't have came up with. Like, there was no script for this, y'all. So I'm so grateful that we could be used. And I just pray that you looking at this camera right now or listening to this audio file, I pray that you are blessed and highly favored from this. And please, please, please tell a friend. You need to tell a friend that they're crafted for glory. So this podcast is made just for you. And I want you to know that you are inspiring, you are amazing, and this is the perfect place to subscribe and be a part of the community. Talk soon.